Hello, my friends. So, welcome to the Consciousness Shift Show again. My name is Hot Yo, and in today's show, I have with me Tomas Alvin, a super soldier that had missions with the Yozora No Kunshu, the Japanese faction, and also with the Nache Waffen, a German faction. And well, at 3 years old, Tomas was taken and raised in a colony at the Tau Setai system. And at 11 years old, he was taken to the New Atlantis colony on Kurila for military training in Mars. Welcome, Tomas.
Hey,
And Thomas, I have just given actually a very, very brief resume. So I pass it over to you to fill up the missing ones and in your own words. Take it away,
well,
Thomas.
okay, yeah, it was actually the New Tel Aviv colony in the Tau Ceti system, and well, you know how like a lot of these things work based off of your genetics. So, um, and these I was on a civilian transport at 11 years old, and when that was happening in the here and now, you know, my mom at the time decided to go to this Harvest Moon Festival up in the Rocky Mountains. And it was like something like a 4 hour drive to get there. So it was like an overnight. And they had these wooden cabins that separated by gender. So, after singing, with a bunch of then 40-year-old hippies, like, after like loading up in s'mores and around a bonfire and singing folk music, I decided that I needed to go to sleep. So I went to the men's cabin, and this one dude was like, "Hey kid, you want the top bunk?" I was like, "Sure." And I was about I didn't even drift off. I just closed my eyes and I woke up, and me and the other version of me literally physically traded places. I was inside the transport ship, and uh, so I know the first thing I noticed was this like almost like a plastic tube in front of me, and I'm like, okay, what the hell is this? I opened it, and I was at a 45-degree angle, but well, the gravity was aligned to the my back, so it felt like I was like laying flat on my back. But um, I was in like this. The best way to describe it is if you remember the medical bay in the original Battlestar Galactica, it looked a lot like one of those tubes, and so every other one was like a 45-degree angle and a 135-degree angle, and they mirrored each other on the other side of the corridor, so it gave it kind of an octagonal look. And there were, so I hopped down on the floor, and my feet were a lot heavier than my head because the way the artificial gravity works. And there's like this metal kind of like no stick surface was kind of almost like digging into the bottom of my feet because of the where the gravity was. And they had like these monitor devices next to them. There were these valves that were like letting out puffs of steam, I guess getting rid of the extra moisture from inside the tubes from the other people who were sleeping in them. And I can hear like the ship's ambience like from the engines, this constant droning kind of. So my 11-year-old self, I was like, uh, yeah, we'll back up. I remember like I was wearing like the silver skin tight bodysuit as well. But yeah, my 11-year-old mind, I was like, okay, I'm in the middle of a spaceship. I'm just gonna climb back into that tube and try to go to sleep. And when I did that, I woke up, or I wouldn't say wake up. I closed my eyes and opened them. I was back in the middle of that cabin. It lasted about like 30 seconds at the most.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then is the new Atlantis colony on Corellia, which is Earth 2, basically is backup, second planet. And there's like an island on there. It's like a tropical island almost, with a large city on it, where they're connected by a series of bridges. That if you're familiar with the Coronado Bridge in San Diego, is kind of similar to that, really high, kind of twisted. And what I remember is, like, from that flashback was, do you remember the movie, the Disney movie, The Sword and Stone, the King Arthur movie? There's an anamorphic chase scene between Merlin and Morgana Le Fay. Well, this almost felt like the real life version, right? And it was like, it was like, from what I was seeing, it looked like I was riding on a broomstick in a forest, chasing after them, feel the wind blowing my hair, and next thing is like, and I pulled off a pair of VR goggles, and I was in a store with a bunch of other, like, looked like 13, 14-year-old kids, and this one girl was like, "Hurry, the store clerk is distracted. Grab it and run." And so we ran to the back of the store, and there's like a cardboard recycling device, almost like, where all these rotating cranks and stuff, levers. I managed to climb up that thing and knock like a panel on the roof, and I climbed off, and there are all these semi-cylindrical looking pastel colored stucco buildings, and there are like hover cars running around. And so we made a beeline for basically like almost like a subway system. Except they had like these magnetic corridors that it looked like it was like almost like a bluish plastic color with like a glowing glue grid on top of it. And see if I can give you an example. Like, let's say I dropped a cigarette pack on it, it would just float there. If I moved it, it'll move and keep on going until something stopped it. So what we did, we took a running jump and landed basically in the skateboard position or surfer position. And I was like literally surfing this tube, going pressed like upside down, and you hear the other kids like, yeah! And we came across a station, and then that's when we climbed up it. Because we knew when the schedule was for the vehicles, so we managed to time it so to avoid like the train. So that was that's why I remember from that flashback at the new Atlantis colony, and I'm guessing kind of trying to put A plus B is that I think my juvenile delinquency was probably what landed me in the military. And yeah, I have some pretty clear memories of Mars. So,
well, tell us something about that.
Well, I remember being part of like a slow evacuation of one of the towns because it was being swallowed by sand dunes. And basically, like the last kind of remaining building was holding facility where there's like at least a couple dozen people kind of gathering around, and they weren't three-dimensional hologram or like isomorphic projections. Looked like a news report and like stock market prices, and yeah. So I met up with another person in the SSP group that I run who remembers being in that same place, but seeing it from the opposite side of the room where she couldn't see the screens because she's there's like a row of chairs that were facing the same direction as the screen, so she wouldn't have seen that. But yeah, what I remember, the thing that really stood out is that place had like, you ever gone to like a Vegas casino, that cheesy red carpet with the pattern, kind of almost like a fractal pattern? You
Uh-huh.
seen that? Like,
Yep.
yeah, it had that kind of same type of carpet. So yeah, that's what I remember the most from that. It's like, that cheesy red casino carpet.
Have you met?
Um,
Yeah. Have you met other people over there, or any extraterrestrials or something?
I remember being among the human Martian natives, and um, I remember coming down a flight of stairs, and they looked like Native Americans. They dressed like Hindus. Give you a good idea, and they wore kind of like really flowing clothing because of the lower gravity.
Uh-huh.
And I was down the flight of stairs, didn't have any banisters, and they're about the size of milk crates, if you can imagine, like kind of those dimensions. Um, Much larger than steps that we would have here.
Hmm.
And I remember like there's a group of Martian women in front of me, and I had to watch my steps so I didn't step on their veils. Uh, and it's a huge open room. And if you remember the movie Blade Runner, in Deckard's apartment, there's like a relief pattern on his walls, kind
Hmm.
of square shape. It's almost identical, like relief pattern on the walls. And there was this huge window about the size of an IMAX movie theater screen, and I could see like this, like the Sidonian Desert, just an amazing vista. Yeah. Um, and yeah, as far as people you're familiar with, there was one of the bases that we had on Mars. About the size, you can imagine like a J.C. Penney sized department store. If you imagine something about that size. And so me and I remember coming in with the other group of people were kind of wearing the black uniforms. Um, and there's it's like an intake room. We're deciding like where to send us, you know, and so this guy had this device that looked like a metal shot glass, and exhale into it, and also it took a genetic sample,
Wow.
and so it had my name, rank, and pretty much on a computer showed where I was going to be assigned. And so me and the group I was with, we moved towards the back wall. And who came in right after me was Randy Kramer and his platoon of Marines. So he looks right at me, gives me a dirty look, takes a shot glass, and he's like, meep, meep. Biocontaminant, 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 biocontaminant.
Were you
So
allowed to,
yeah,
were you allowed to talk freely with the other people there?
well, since I was in like a dark fleet uniform, which was basically Navy, and he was a Marine, that's probably why he gave he took that. That's probably why he had that reaction. um, when we were doing the basic training, we had these like filter that you know because like Mars, there's like a lot of dust, especially at the lower gravity. Um, And another problem with that is there's some parts of the planet that has a breathable atmosphere. It's like maybe 10% humidity,
Uh-huh.
and even though they tell you breathe through your nose, every so often you forget and then inhale through your mouth. Well, at the same time, in the here and now, when I was in high school, about like 17, 18, we'd be running in PE, and all of a sudden, my windpipe would just suddenly get bone dry, and it's like I'd be trying to run, it's all, and that's not a terrestrial condition.
Oh.
It's part of let me find the video and I mute the audio. Hold on, do a quick screen share. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mute the audio so you don't get like okay. Let's do a screen share real quick. Where's all right, share. All right. As soon as the thing decides to, all right. Yeah, find it. Here it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna maximize the screen.
Oh.
And all right, so I mute the audio, so don't worry about this. But yeah, when I was in middle school, every time I tried to do math, I would get these flashes, and it looked identical to the scene from this movie right here. Let's. Right here, and yeah, I would get these type of flashes every time I try to do like say long division on paper,
Uh-huh.
and I get these flashes of like quantum mechanics equations,
Wow.
which would cause me to have a petit mal seizure. It's almost like an invisible hand would be pushing my head down. That's because in and the in the SSP, the way they'd educate you is through VR training. They'd literally download the stuff into your brain, and the teaching came from now we try to figure out what it is that you see stop to share, and it's like then you have to decipher everything you just downloaded, but that caused a lot of interference. One time when I was in high school, like it just kept hitting me repeatedly. Now I can get past it if I either lay my head down sideways and do the math work, or stand up and do it. Which my regular math teacher was cool as long as I did the work. But for some reason he couldn't show up and didn't have time to call a substitute, so they moved me into they moved our class into the next room, and this idiot teacher's like, "Stop falling asleep." I'm like, "Okay, I'm not falling asleep." So I try to stand up. She's like, "Sit down," and then try to lay down. Like, use the right seat position. So finally, it's like I stood up. I threw the desk out. I was like, "Bitch, I'm having a seizure."
Oh, wow. Anyways,
Yeah. Funny thing is, she got into trouble with the principal, not me.
oh, that's hilarious.
And I tried to tell the principals, like, I kept having these seizures, and this is the way out of it. Mr. Wilson was fine with it, but this biatch couldn't get it through her skull. you know. So yeah, that a lot of that has to do with like the quantum entanglement from being in the SSP.
Mm-hmm. Well, what an experience. And well, I also believe that, or I getting confused. Were you in the Dark Fleet? What is the Dark Fleet and so on? Can you just tell us something about it?
Yeah, it's basically the Interstellar Space Navy.
Oh,
Yeah, different factions have like, um, yeah, Nacht Waffen is the German faction, and um, it's almost like a joint German American thing, but there's a split with like the Space Alliance, which became the independent American branch, and then the Yozora No Kunshu is the Japanese branch, and I had a 20 in back with them when I served on the Horizon, which was I served on 2 command carriers. I was briefly on the Patton, which was kind of the American one, and the Horizon, which was the Japanese one. And you can imagine, like, the Horizon was basically, imagine like a 20-mile long flash drive.
Wow.
That's kind of what it looked like. It's kind of rectangular shape. They painted it. It was like a black, almost like stealth color. So you can imagine like a flash drive with a city on top and a really, really big cannon below it, and which was like the primary weapon, and then it had like a vertical dual plane sword configuration with the engines on the back. And we could talk about the different engine configurations later on if you want. And I was a logistics officer on the Horizon for the most part. And we used the primary weapon on minimal power once. Came into somebody's system and imploded their version of Pluto. And I heard like later on the Admiral, when they hailed the planet, it's like, and not his actual name, but close enough to it, because I met the Admiral Naguru, I'm going to call him, was my middle school principal in the Here and Now. So I talk about like quantum entanglement, So, granted, he was middle-aged when I was in middle school, but considering the fact that he's Japanese, the odds are in his favor that he's still alive. So I don't want him or his family to get doxxed or anything. That, unfortunately, when it comes to people talking about their secret space program experience, that type of shit tends to happen. So let's just call him Admiral Naguru. I remember like hearing secondhand that he hailed the people from that system. It's like, this is Admiral Naguru, the Yozora No Kunshu. If you attack one of our merchant fleets again, next time we'll destroy your home world.
Wow. So yeah, carry on.
And one time we came under attack, and it's a very vivid flashback. And we were like coming down the corridors, and the emergency sirens are going off, and on the Horizon they had this like kind of high pitch, like nee 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 nee, and there was an explosion going off. I didn't see it, but I felt the concussive force like knock me and half the other people off our feet. And I got up, and one of the officers like grabbed me by my uniform and was like, "You grab a cannon." It's like, I'm a mechanic. It's like, you're now a fucking gunnery sergeant. Grab a cannon, and kind of threw me in the direction of the bulkhead where, this one female officer like grabbed me by my left forearm, kind of dragged me towards it. It's like, there's one available over there, and they had these tubes along the end of the bulkhead, these vertical tubes, and they're indicator lights, so red for occupied, green for unoccupied. And there, she slammed the button, and this door opened up, and she jumped in the tube, and she got sucked upwards. I jumped in, and I got pulled down, and I ended up almost like, imagine like a bicycle seat with a back to it, and these straps came down over my chest, and they were like these armrests, right? I put my arms on it, and these straps came over my forearms, and I remember a bunch of needles injecting into it, like pumping me full of drugs to increase my hand-eye coordination and my visual acuity. And this HUD system came down, and basically what it was, as each arm can move a cannon independently, and then I'd swing the whole body, and the whole turret would move. There's like a foot pedal for like a bigger weapon. So like plasma cannons and like an antimatter cannon, it would took longer to charge. And basically, I spent about 5 or 6 hours shooting at little red squares that I saw on my HUD system. And then when it was over, I remember the crash from the drugs sucked. But that was like the only real time I remember seeing action on the horizon. Most of it I did, like I said, logistical work. Um, I started as a supply clerk in the cargo hold, which they use basically hypercubes to save on maximize storage space. So if like you were going to the Home Depot where you pull the sliding panel, there's a door, you can open it. Imagine doing that, but when you open the door, you step inside a big storage room. So like the inside is bigger than the outside.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like so it's like a hypercube. And there's this one time where I was with this one dude whose name was Ryu, and somebody like accidentally shut the door when we were inside, and it's like, okay, eventually somebody's gonna figure it out when we don't report for a duty shift, and it's like, what if we have starving? I was like, dude, look, there's a ton of food in here. It's not processed. It's like beat starvation. And anyways, like after a while, I got tired of this guy's like, Ryu, if you don't shut the fuck up, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you right now. But finally, somebody did come in and like let us out. I remember working on the flight deck, and I had the thankless job of scrubbing the nebula residue when one of our cargo ships got a little too close. And yeah, you never want to fly directly into a nebula. For one thing, there are things that like to lurk in a nebula. It's like, good example. It's like, and it's probably the only thing that movie got accurate was the Solo. I seen when he's flying to Nebula, and all of a sudden these bunch of tentacles come out. There are things like that actually do lurk in nebulas. Also, it messes with your sense of navigation, and because depending on the composition of the nebula, because our propulsion is like electrogravitic based, this residue starts clinging to the outer hull, and this like nasty kind of gooey stuff that smells like a really intense combination of ammonia and sulfur. And yeah, like that was one of my jobs, is to scrub that shit off. that was fun.
Well, Thomas,
Yeah.
I also heard that in spite of all that tough duty that you had been while on mission, you also played some pranks.
Oh yeah, that was on the Franklin when I started out as the intelligence officer, and that was my female clone alter. So if I talk about her in the third person, because it's really awkward saying I had a nice pair of C cups. um, yeah, there's this prank that we used to pull with the gravity plating. I said earlier, like the artificial gravity, how like your feet are a bit heavier than your head, and the normal settings, it's like 1.15 G at your feet and 0.85 G if you put your hand up like this. But what we do is there's one guy, and well, kind of give you kind of idea that it was like a section of gravity plating was about 15 feet long and 7.5 feet wide. And on the bulkhead, there's like an access point to get to the control mechanism. And this one guy figured out how to pop mod it, which is modify the potentiometer to make the vertical threshold go from this to. concentrate. So we made sure we had other people make sure that nobody was stepping on it when we were doing this. But so at the feet level, it'd be like 5 Gs, and at head level, it would be like 0.15 G. And so three of us, we light a cigarette and position it, which is really awkward sensation when this part of your arm is relatively normal gravity and this is practically zero gravity. It's an awkward sensation, but we position it and give it a flick. And what it would do is you see the cigarette kind of travel like this with just enough downward, barely any downward pull, but because it was an almost zero gravity, it'd be like a trail of smoke rings behind it. And right when it got to the last 3 or 4 feet, all of a sudden it would arc and nosedive. So it'd be like that. And if you did it right, the filter would literally pancake on the plating and the smoke would splatter because once it becomes heavier than air, it acts like a liquid. So yeah, and we kind of like have a race. Like let's, first you got to do it right because if all of a sudden the cigarette starts spinning, it'll just hit the wrong way. But like I say, if you do it just right, it had also an arc and boom. And you have like like literally it'd be like this big around like a disc in the shape of a cigarette butt.
Wow. What a prank. And okay, I've not talked to somebody who is very conversant with the engine system, or what you call the technical part of the Starship. Can you just tell us something about that?
Well, there's different types. You know, the one I'm the most familiar with because I had my own ship that was customized is like kind of the old fashioned one. It was like a mercury based warp drive system, and the basic formula for warp drive is electricity affects magnetism.
Mm-hmm.
Magnetism affects gravity, and then gravity affects the flow of time. And what you do is is when you create like an artificial gravity well, and one of the things that is it creates forward momentum, but when you create the time dilation, that's how you move faster than the speed of light, is because you're in a time warp. So, for lack of a better word, it's a warp drive.
Wow.
Let me, if you want to pause it real quick, I'm gotta use the bathroom and I'm gonna reuptake of my caffeine.
Okay.
All right.
Carry on. So we really had a very technical input from Tomas, and he's got great recall of his times in Mars. So when he comes back, I'm going to ask him something about black goo, which I really have not much of an idea about. So let's wait for Thomas and see what he can say about the black goo. And I find him to be very hilarious kind of guy, But as I said, he's got great recall, and we're going to do a part 2 in this series of talk with Thomas, and I'm going to line up with more specific questions. This is just an intro to Thomas, and I think he's got lots to tell us.
Let me,
Oh, he's coming back now.
hold on a second. Let me just.
I get that he's a night owl, and he doesn't function that well in the mornings.
Yeah, I'm thinking like I must have had like the graveyard shift when I was in Darkfleet more than once, because like my biological clock is like 8 hours off sometimes.
Well,
And today I got this like I don't know because like normally I usually like when my hair gets a certain length I get like a marine style buzz cut because it gives me like 6 months of good hair, but I got this like retro 70s like early 80s thing going because the quarantine everything shut.
okay, let's go to something else, Thomas, which I think you have more knowledge
Okay.
than me. Um, let's talk about this mysterious stuff called black goo.
You yeah. From what I know, it's basically it's a self-aware siphonic virus. And a siphon is something where the line between technological and biological is indistinguishable because it's femtotech based, so it's beyond you know it's beyond micromolecular. It's a step. Talk about like something the size of quarks and electrons. And it's self-aware, and basically its goal is to exterminate organic life.
Ooh.
Um, when people consume this stuff, it increases their longevity, increases their intelligence, but they lose their humanity.
Wow.
Which you hear like all the horrible things that happen to kidnapped children. That's what makes it possible for people to do that. You know, because I mean, the one thing neither of us could ever like rape and torture a child. You know,
Yeah.
it's not it's you know if we saw somebody trying, we'd probably kill the person. you know,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, they lose their humanity, and a lot of the people, the high ups, are addicted to adrenochrome, um, which basically they'll rape and torture a child, and then without any anesthesia, they'll cut open the brain cap and extract the fluids from the pineal and pituitary gland, mix it with adrenaline in the child's blood, and then shoot it up in the needle, and that gives them like a massive high.
Oh,
Um,
horrible. Horrible.
yeah, some really sick shit. I remember one time I was in San Francisco, and there's this like drug dealer. He was bragging that I can get you any drug, you just name it. Okay, give me 10 cc's of adrenochrome. Guy comes back, or he goes away to talk to his connection. He came back white as a ghost. And he's like, my guy told me if I, under the pain of death, to never ask about that shit again.
Oh, yeah. And the latest news we have, and I'm sure you're aware of, that these kids are actually, those who have been kidnapped, um, are actually being rescued into underneath tunnels, and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so like that's one of the reasons it turned Central Park into a field hospital, basically. Um,
Oh,
and now you heard about that guy who tried to run a train into the Mercy in Los Angeles. the hospital
Oh,
ship, the Mercy. Yeah, this
oh,
guy was attempting to derail the train and crash it into the boat.
oh,
And I highly suspect he was like a Manchurian candidate. Like there was like a programmed alter personality that took over to do that.
wow.
He got charged with one count of attempted of train wrecking. I didn't even know that was a crime. I mean, attempted vehicular homicide with a train. I could see that, but I didn't know that train wrecking was an actual crime.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So, do you have any other things that you would like to tell the audience, Thomas?
Well, when the majority of ETs we encounter out there, the most of them are human variants. Um, so human is a nomenclature. It's not a species. There are
Oh,
multiple different species of human. Um, some of them, look pretty much like us, and some of them are pretty different. Like, yeah, there's one in particular where, um, they have like a three-fingered hand,
oh.
or two fingers and a thumb, and this part of their face, its facial depth is a lot longer, almost like a snout,
Hmm.
and that kind of long pointed ears and a tail that has a tuft on the end. And they when they and also their feet, like the arches are a lot longer. It almost looks like a dog or a cat's paw. And you look at them, you think they evolved from like an equine or something. But then
Ah.
you run a genetic scanner on it, and it's like, yeah, they're human. It's a human variant. um, Usually, one thing that's interesting when it comes to size differential, and humans are not primates. There's some primate species out there be very offended if we call ourselves primates. We're hominids.
Oh.
If you look at like a human compared to a chimp, we're nothing alike. Actually, if you look at a limb proportion, we're closer to that of a rodent. Look at like, you look at a monkey, right? Their hands and their feet are pretty much. You look at a squirrel's feet. What do you have? You know, so hominids are a different evolutionary split between like rodent and primate. Went off in a different tangent with hominids, and that also includes like the Yeti, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and I forgot the ones that they're in South America, but uh, we pretty much evolved from that nomenclature. We're not, Darwin is a moron, and he's a eugenicist. So,
Oh, yeah. Well,
yeah,
this
we're Dar. Oh, go on.
I'm still at the idea of size, meaning some of them are very huge, some of them are lesser than 5 feet tall. Is that
Yeah,
right?
for anywhere usually between 2 and like 10 feet is the average for humans. Some of there are probably some very rare exceptions. But one thing that humans have in common with rodents is that the eyes and ears are pretty much relative versus the rest of the size. So like the really small guys, even though their head might be a little bit smaller, their eyes and ears be roughly this. Actually, most human variants, their eyes are actually bigger than us. But like you see the really little guys and have big eyes, and big ears, and then the really big dudes are so relative to have like smaller beady little eyes and little small ears.
Oh. The big ones, they are more than 2 meters tall.
Um, some of them are like maybe 10 feet tall.
Oh.
I've seen like, I mean, there are other like non-humans that have been seen like in excess of like 60 feet tall. You know, I'm not talking about like human brain. I'm talking about like non-humans. And you know, between 6 inches and 60 feet. That's usually what you encounter. But what a lot of times, like on hub worlds, people are roughly within a certain size range. Um, a lot of it has to do with gravity. Where it's probably easier for the really little dudes, and on the average is like say Mars, between Earth and Mars standard. So it's usually like 3/4 Earth gravity is fairly common. And that's usually between the 3 and 10 feet range, because like if you're like a little 6 inch tall guy, it's kind of hard to avoid being stepped on. And the really big ones, gravity causes a problem. That's one of the things I can tell you what killed the dinosaurs was an increase in gravity. Yeah, it was increasing gravity.
Oh.
Because dinosaur times, you had like a pterodactyl that had a wingspan that would make a twin-engine Cessna jealous. You had like flying insects the size of macaws, and the reason why is there's less gravity. Something the size of a brontosaurus, if you're trying to do a Jurassic Park thing, it would get crushed under its own weight.
Right.
It'd be so big and massive. What caused that was somebody fired an object made out of certain types of metals. But the impact crater is the Gulf of Mexico. Oh. And if you look at the mountain ranges, it's you can see the primary shock wave, the secondary shock wave, and everything extends outward from the Gulf of Mexico. Where like you kind of see where North America, Europe, and Africa were connected. But if you look at Alaska, you kind of see where Alaska and Russia kind of were pulled apart too.
Oh.
And like I said, look at in North America, you have like the Rocky Mountains, and in South America, you have the Andes. That's like kind of the primary shock wave. And you look at like Asia and Africa, the mountain ranges, it's like the mirror image almost. It's like on the opposite end where you got the primary shock wave. It's almost like if you take like a rock and slam it into a ball of putty, you'd have that ripple effect. And then you have like a flat plateau. Then you have the secondary shock wave. Say in North America, you have the Smoky Mountains. And then it's like you look at the East Coast, it's almost like in the United States and the West Coast of Europe, it's like it's stretched, like it got pushed. It's almost like you take the entire landmass and squish it like that. And like I said, look at the focal point in the center, and you look at the Caribbean islands and like Cuba. You look at like an impact crater, it has that sombrero shape. That's like the center of the impact crater.
Well, the next time I look at the map of the world, I would look into it as what you said to see for myself this shock wave effects. That's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, get like a height map. It shows like the, and you can clearly see it. What caused that was somebody used a mass driver to deliver that object. Because something that size, if it was an asteroid hurling from space, that would be a planet killer. And also, like I said, it was made out of like soft metals. You see it in the sediment layer with the metals. It melted, it landed inside like a magma layer, melted, but they have electromagnetic properties. yeah, gold, silver, nickel, zinc, copper, and when because like basically, what causes gravity is basically is well, okay. There's like the core of the Earth is basically a miniature star, right? And stars are electric; they're not burning fireballs. Whoever says a sustained nuclear fusion explosion doesn't know jack shit about nuclear fusion. Um, but basically, let's say the Earth's North Pole is negative, and the South Pole is positive. That connects to the Sun's South Pole, which is negative. The Sun's North Pole which is negative, connects to the Earth's North Pole, which is positive. It completes a circuit. We have is a giant electron magnet.
Oh.
Yeah. So what happens when you increase the electromagnetic conductivity? It basically increases the power of that electron magnet. So that so somebody, I would assume it was probably the Lyrans who did that, because this used to be the capital of a galactic empire.
Oh.
Well, it is again now, the Third Solar Empire. But yeah, the planet was terraformed. One, it did kill the dinosaurs. Two, it increased the gravity, something that's more tolerable to us. Now, the saurians that were a reptilian race that evolved from velociraptors, but don't let that fool you. They're actually they're pretty benevolent. One of the reasons they ended up towards the center of kind of like the hollow Earth. There's both the hollow Earth and then there's the porous Earth, with the Gartha. The reason why they went there is because the gravity is lighter towards the center of the Earth. And then later on, with the fall of Atlantis, that's where you get the Agarthans that went underground. This is where I disagree. Like George Uaslako, his research is spot on. I think his conclusions are off. It wasn't ancient aliens; it was ancient Mad Max. Atlantis and Lemuria went to war, and the surface of the planet. Well, there were several times because, like, the first solar empire was destroyed because we pissed off people from around the galaxy. That was Moon Nu. That predates Atlantis. The Great Sphinx of Giza was originally built by the Lyrans during the first solar empire, and originally the whole thing was fine. Some arrogant pharaoh decided to have his face carved on it. But there's water damage on the Sphinx from when it was left abandoned for almost 100,000 years from water damage from when Egypt used to be a jungle.
Wow.
Yeah, it's over 100,000 years old. And so that's like the first solar empire. And see if let me do a little screen share, find it first. This is proof of like an ancient. All right, let's see if I find a better picture. Here we go. Oh, come on, you're being a bitch. Okay, back. Sorry. Okay, we do a screen share real quick. Now look at this. Just do a Google search for Saturn Moon Death Star. This is not natural.
Yeah.
It's there's like there on the equator, and it's two of them too. Like one, okay, coincidence, but two identical. And look at this. All right, there's along the equator. There's a perfect vertical wall, and if you look at this thing right here, this is a good example right here comparing to the Death Star. Um, like you got this disc-shaped thing at a perfect 45-degree angle. That is not a naturally occurring phenomenon. And let me show you this. Saturn and Pandora.
Mm-hmm.
Look at it. It's perfectly symmetrical. It almost looks like a Klingon bird of prey without the wings.
Wow.
Another example. This is not a naturally occurring phenomenon. What happened with the first solar empire is basically the rings of Saturn were an incomplete super weapon. Originally, what it would have been able to do if it was activated is you pretty much destroy just about any planet in the galaxy. And like I said, it's protected. When we talk about like orbital defense platforms, you have tweeters, woofers, and woofers, and those things are like subwoofers.
Mm.
It's surrounded by like orbital defense system, which somebody kicked our ass because it destroyed the original capital planet, which is now the asteroid belt.
Oh yeah.
And I think what I understand, like Mars was actually a habitable moon from that planet, and Mars bore the brunt of the explosion because one side of Mars is completely pelted with asteroid craters, which is
Really?
indicative of a planetary explosion.
I see.
So then we get to Atlantis and Lemuria, and they brought that on themselves. You hear like alternatives 2 and 3, which is like our government's continuation of government protocol in case of a nuclear war. Alternative 2 is you go underground.
Uh-huh.
You wait till the fallout and the radiation is over. And alternative 3 was you go out into space, like maybe build a base on the Mars or the moon. Well, the Atlanteans actually put that into practice when Atlantis and Lemuria got destroyed. This is where you get the Agarthans from, who, when you go for like several generations without any natural sunlight, albinism is a kind of a genetic quirk, a mutation, which you see in like, you see it in rats in a pet store
Mm-hmm.
or mice, where where they start becoming albinos, is because you have so many generations without natural sunlight, which explains the people's description of both the Argarthan people and the quote unquote Nordic ETs. And so that's when we get it. So if like I said, we're not indigenous to this planet, anyways. We're all descended from Lyrans, who are there. This is interesting. I tell a lot of friends of mine who are Christians. It's like the events in the Bible are true. They just got the dates wrong. It's a retelling of a much, much, much older story.
Oh.
Where the Elohim,
Mm-hmm.
who originated from the Andromeda galaxy, created the Lyrans in their image.
Oh.
And that happened over something like 200-300 million years ago.
Oh wow.
And it kind of explains like, where to get like the 4000 BC number is because when the Council of Nicaea were deciding what should and what should not be in the Bible, 4,000 years BC were the oldest manuscripts they could find.
I see.
Which is the same mistake that the current scientists make, because 4.5 billion years are the oldest rocks they can find.
Oh yeah.
Kind of forget that induction subduction zones. You know, the surface of the planet's been turning. You know, the Earth is about 9 trillion years old.
Really? Oof.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you, Thomas. And it's indeed, you've given a lot of information, which I think people will not be able to find it anywhere in material wise. So, is there any other uh, things that you would like to say before we sign up or we sign off?
Well, I mean, we're gonna do another episode on a fresh new topic, anyways.
Yeah.
Because I can go on I can go on like next topic probably take like an hour or so to get around. So at least for now. And oh yeah, one thing. If the audience will notice is because we're talking. Anytime you talk about the secret space program, look at the recommended videos that YouTube puts up.
Uh-huh.
Streaming live bullshit from NASA. There's like at least probably 2 or 3 of them. You'll notice like in the recommended videos.
Wow. Right. So I think it's
And
time.
you'll find this on every single video that's secret space program related. They'll stick that up there in the recommended videos.
Okay, Thomas. Thank you for your time and your input. So definitely we'll talk again on some other topics, interesting topics. And so thank you very much and see you again. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.